welcome to another photographic moment. It's been a while again since I did one of these. Apologize for that. I've been wanting to do a new one for quite some time, especially because I get new subscribers almost every day. So what I want to talk about today is photographing spring landscapes with wildflowers. And right now I'm in this incredible field of Texas bluebonnets in the Texas Hill Country between Marble Falls and Johnson City. And I've been playing around and photographing the scene, compressing certain sections of it, going wider, zooming in, and trying different depths of field, and it's really fun to work with. And I think this is a great example too of why it's important, if you take a trip for photography or just take a day during a trip to do photography, is to go out and explore somewhere that's a little bit off the map and away from anything that's kind of planned. Because oftentimes, you know, what you weren't expecting is going to end up being the best image of your trip. So this is a good lesson of that, because I had no idea this was here, and I can go over so many of my images. The best sellers are almost always the ones that I didn't think, you know, oh wow, this is a location I want to get to, and this is what I want to photograph. It's always a little bit something that I wasn't looking for. So good point. The other thing I want to mention is about doing this type of photography in this setting, in this landscape, is to always beware of your background, because this is true with portraits, nature, wildlife, any type of photography really. In your scene, if you have a distracting element, it's going to take away from your subject, and it's going to distract from what you're trying to convey with that image. In this case, if you look, there's a chain link fence back there, and to me that's an extremely distracting element in this type of scene, because I want to keep it as natural as possible. Okay, so you know, unfortunately in landscapes today, just about everywhere we go, unless it's like out in the middle of a national park someplace, is that we've got fences, telephone poles, wires, all these things. So always look at the background when you're setting up your shot and think about, hey, what can I do to eliminate that? It's much better to compose your image first correctly and get as clean of an image as possible, meaning your subject is clear, there's no distracting elements in the background, there's no lines leading out from the edges and leading away from your subject. Rather than saying, oh, okay, I can do this at post-processing and I can Photoshop that fence out. Well, you can see this is a very busy background, and Photoshopping a chain link fence out of the background in this scene, it's going to be very difficult, okay? So it's much better to start with a clean composition first, okay? The other thing too I'd like to recommend is using different apertures in this type of setting. I like focusing on a particular section of these, and so I'll use a wide aperture like a 4.0 or 5.6 and have the ones in the foreground and the ones in the background go out of focus, and that makes for a little bit more impact. Okay. Another thing is to make sure you have a sharp point of focus, and if you notice, and I apologize if the sound goes in and out on this video, it's because of the wind. This is spring, and along with the bluebonnets here, we have a lot of wind. And we want to look and make sure that we're using a fast enough shutter speed to freeze the motion to make sure we have sharp detail where we need it. In order to do that, we have a lot more latitude in this now with digital cameras. We can take that ISO and get it up there to where we get a fast enough shutter speed. And keep in mind, when you're using a telephoto or a zoom, not only are you bringing in the subject closer, you're also magnifying the motion. So the longer the lens, like the 70 to 200 or 300 or something like that, you're going to have a shutter speed that's 1/250th of a second and higher, faster, okay? So that's a good point to keep in mind. Well, I'm going to get back to working with this scene, and happy to be here in Texas in the Hill Country. It's a beautiful time of the year, and I hope everybody has a great spring and great images for this season. Thank you.